Do you believe your refrigerator is the ultimate guardian of your food? That single belief, so common and deeply ingrained, is about to be completely overturned. The moment a banana enters its cold embrace, it becomes a dead fruit. Its life force extinguished. A potato transforms. Its potential to create carcinogens multiplying. Garlic loses its medicinal power, becoming a welcoming host for mold and toxins. That chilled box in your kitchen, the one you trust without question, could very well be the most dangerous space in your home, quietly undermining your health day by day. My name is Dr. Arthur Wallace, and for the better part of 30 years, I've dedicated my life to studying food preservation and the subtle, insidious ways nutrition can be destroyed. After thousands of experiments, both in the lab and in the simple kitchens of my community, I have seen the truth of the nutritional devastation that occurs daily inside the average refrigerator. The very act of chilling food, which we've been taught to believe is the cornerstone of keeping our families healthy, has in fact been gradually weakening us. Think about it. Have you ever pulled a banana from the fridge, the peel looking perfectly fine, only to find the inside mushy and tasteless? That is the tangible result of the stress that refrigeration inflicts upon certain foods. We place our groceries in the cold, thinking we are protecting them, when in reality, we are stripping them of their vitality, their very essence. What's truly frightening is how we repeat this mistake every single day, completely unaware of the consequences. We shop with health in mind. We refrigerate to preserve freshness. Yet, inside that cold, dark box, our food is slowly, silently turning against us. Potatoes see their sugar content triple, creating carcinogens when fried. Garlic loses more than half of its antibacterial compounds as mold begins to silently bloom. My journey into this field wasn't born from academic curiosity alone. It was born from love and concern for my own mother. She had been a bastion of health her entire life, only to suddenly be plagued by digestive problems in her later years. When I looked into her daily habits, I found a significant issue in the way she used her refrigerator. She put everything in it. Everything. Even spices like garlic and onions were subjected to the cold, a habit she believed was preserving their potency. That discovery sparked a 30-year quest, a deep dive into a subject most people take for granted. By the end of our time together today, you will see with absolute clarity just how dangerous the common wisdom about refrigeration truly is. It has taken me a very long time to compile this knowledge, and I share it with the hope that it will empower you. Think for a moment. What foods are most common in your own refrigerator right now? Share them, if you will, because the 7 foods I am about to discuss are of critical importance. It's highly likely that most of you are refrigerating them at this very moment. And that is precisely the problem. That simple, unthinking habit, the one we all believe is right, is the very thing making us weaker. Do not turn away from this. This one story could completely transform your kitchen and your health forever. Not long ago, a man named Frank Peterson, a retired carpenter of 70, came to see me. He wasn't a patient in the traditional sense. We were old friends. He'd always sworn by garlic for his health, mincing a fresh clove into his meals every single day. But lately, he complained, the garlic had no aroma, and his stomach was constantly unsettled. I asked him to bring me a sample of the garlic he was using. He brought a small glass jar of cloves he'd minced himself and stored in the refrigerator for convenience. I took it to my small home lab for analysis. The results were shocking. In its chilled, pre-chopped state, the allicin, the powerful compound that gives garlic its medicinal punch, had diminished by more than half. Worse still, microscopic mold toxins were beginning to form. This wasn't just a simple storage mistake, it was a clear example of how a healing food can turn into a burden on the body. Frank had been healthy his whole life, a man who could still build a bookshelf with the steady hands of a man half his age. But for the last few months, he'd felt sluggish, his digestion constantly off-kilter. It turned out the problem was the very food he believed was his medicine. By storing it in the fridge after chopping, he had stripped it of its benefits and was instead consuming something that was only adding to his body's toxic load. If you miss this crucial point, you will never grasp the core of what I am about to share. So please, listen closely. This is the true story of the foods that turn toxic the moment they enter the refrigerator, and it's highly probable that you are making these same mistakes every single day. Let me tell you about another friend, Martha Jenkins. At 68, Martha had a sweet tooth that she satisfied with her favorite fruit, bananas. She'd buy a week's supply and put them straight into the refrigerator, believing it would keep them perfectly ripe. But after just 2 days, the peels would turn a deep, bruised black. When she ate one, she'd tell me, it was mushy and bland, with a strange odor, almost chemical aftertaste. She, like so many others, assumed that cold meant fresh. But for a tropical fruit like a banana, the cold of a refrigerator is a death sentence. The low temperature causes its cell walls to break down, triggering a rapid destruction of its nutrients. This is what happens in our kitchens every single day. We refrigerate with the best of intentions, but in doing so, our food is losing its nutritional value and, in some cases, even developing harmful substances. Can you imagine how tragic this is? The very food you buy to protect your health is being transformed into a tool that harms it. If you follow this story to the end, you will understand with crystal clarity why you must change your habits immediately. The knowledge I am about to share has the power to completely revolutionize the way you manage your food and your health. It is only by listening to the end and putting this wisdom into practice that you can experience a true transformation. This one simple change, this small shift in your daily routine, can change everything. So let's begin. Let's look at the foods we interact with every day and their direct, often damaging, relationship with the cold. We will now go through the 7 specific foods that you must never ever put in your refrigerator. These are items you likely eat every day, and they are probably sitting in your fridge right this very moment. I will explain each one carefully, so I ask for your full attention. First, let's begin with the banana. As I mentioned with my friend Martha, refrigeration causes the cell walls of a banana to rupture. When this happens, its internal enzymes are released, leading to a catastrophic loss of nutrients. Research from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food Research Center has shown that a banana stored below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, that's about 13 degrees Celsius, can lose over 80% of its vitamin C. Think about that number, 80%. It's a staggering loss. Many of you, like Martha, have probably experienced this firsthand. You put a banana in the fridge, the peel turns black, and the taste becomes disappointingly bland. This is a visible stress response. Bananas are tropical fruits. They are not designed for the cold. To a banana, the inside of your refrigerator is like the Arctic tundra. So, what is the proper way to store a banana? The ideal method is to keep them in a cool, dry place, somewhere between 55 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Hanging them on a hook where air can circulate is even better. Now, if a banana is perfectly ripe, and you can't eat it right away, there is a solution. In that case, and only in that case, you should peel it, cut it up, and store it in the freezer. Freezing minimizes nutrient degradation while allowing for long-term storage, but here is the critical point to remember. Never refrigerate a banana before it is fully ripe. Putting an unripe, green banana in the fridge will halt the ripening process completely. It will never develop its full nutritional profile or its sweet flavor. How are you storing your bananas? If they are in the refrigerator, I urge you to make a change today. Next, let's discuss the potato. Storing potatoes in the refrigerator creates a truly significant problem. The cold temperature causes the potatoes' starches to convert into sugars. When you then cook these sugar-laden potatoes at high temperatures by frying, baking, or roasting them, a harmful chemical called acrylamide is formed. This substance is flagged by the World Health Organization as a probable carcinogen. A study conducted by the National Food Research Institute in Japan revealed that potatoes stored in the refrigerator for just 2 weeks showed a 3-fold increase in sugar content. As the sugar levels rise, the potato browns much faster during cooking, and it is in this browning process that large amounts of acrylamide are produced. I recall a neighbor, David Chen, a man of 72 who prided himself on his homemade French fries. He mentioned to me once that his fries had started tasting strangely bitter and were burning before they could get crispy. It turned out he had recently started storing his potatoes in the crisper drawer of his fridge, thinking it would keep them firm. That bitter taste was the direct result of the increased sugar content and the chemical reaction it caused. The best way to store potatoes is in a cool, dark place, ideally around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A well-ventilated pantry or a cellar is perfect. And whatever you do, never store potatoes and onions together. The gases released by the onions will cause the potatoes to sprout much more quickly. Another crucial tip is to never store them wet. Any moisture will accelerate rot. They must also be kept out of the sunlight, which causes them to turn green and produce a toxic substance called solanine. Have you ever stored potatoes in your refrigerator? If so, please, for the sake of your health, take them out today and find a cool, dark corner for them. This is especially important if you enjoy fried or roasted potatoes. The third item is garlic. Garlic is an indispensable ingredient in so many of our kitchens. However, refrigerating it causes a host of problems. The cold, humid environment of a refrigerator is a stressor for garlic, encouraging it to sprout, promoting mold growth, and degrading its potent medicinal properties. A study published by the Department of Food and Nutritional Sciences at Tokyo University reported that refrigerated garlic loses more than half of its allicin content. Allicin is the very heart of garlic's power, the compound responsible for its antibacterial properties, its ability to improve blood circulation, and its immune-boosting effects. To lose over half of that is a tremendous waste. My dear friend, a retired librarian named Eleanor Vance, who at 78 still had a sparkle in her eye, told me her refrigerated garlic had become slimy and had lost its signature pungent aroma. She even noticed some spots that looked like mold. This is a common phenomenon caused by the refrigerator's humidity and temperature fluctuations. Garlic, by its nature, thrives in a dry, cool environment. A whole, unpeeled head of garlic is best stored in a well-ventilated spot, somewhere between 60 and 65 degrees, in a dry place. Storing it in a mesh bag and hanging it up, or placing it in a wire basket in a ventilated area, is ideal. However, minced garlic is a different story. Once chopped, the increased surface area makes it oxidize very quickly. In this case, it is best to portion it out and store it in the freezer. Freezing will preserve its nutrients and allow for long-term storage with minimal degradation. The key mistake to avoid is storing whole garlic in a sealed container or a plastic bag. Without proper ventilation, moisture gets trapped, creating a perfect breeding ground for mold. So, how are you currently storing your minced garlic? If it's in a sealed container in the fridge, I strongly suggest portioning it out and moving it to the freezer starting today. Fourth on our list is the onion. Like garlic, onions are a daily staple, but placing a whole onion in the refrigerator significantly increases its chances of rotting. On the other hand, a cut onion can actually benefit from refrigeration. Understanding this distinction is crucial. Research has shown that when whole onions are stored between 40 and 50 degrees, their glucose and fructose levels can rise. This increase in sugar makes them a more hospitable environment for bacteria, causing them to soften and turn mushy. A community member, Mr. Sato, who is 70, once told me he stored his whole onions in the fridge for a few days, only to find them soft and watery. This was a direct side effect of refrigeration. Whole, unpeeled onions should be stored in a cool, dry, dark, and well-ventilated space. A mesh bag hung in a pantry or a basket in a ventilated cupboard is perfect. However, if you've cut an onion in half or sliced it, the leftovers should be stored in a sealed glass container in the refrigerator. But be sure to use it within 7 days. A critical point of caution: never store whole onions in a sealed plastic bag. This traps moisture and will lead to mold and rot. And, as mentioned with potatoes, onions and potatoes must be stored separately. The ethylene gas released from onions will cause potatoes to sprout prematurely. How do you store your onions in the fridge or at room temperature? If you're putting whole onions in the fridge, please try taking them out starting today. Number 5 is bread. Many people refrigerate bread, but this is, in fact, the worst possible choice. Refrigeration actually accelerates the staling process. The cold temperature causes the starch molecules in the bread to recrystallize, a process known as retrogradation, which makes the bread hard and tough. Research from the Food Engineering Department at Kansas State University found that bread stored in the refrigerator stales up to 6 times faster than bread left at room temperature. 6 times. That's an enormous difference. A woman from my book club, 66-year-old Carol Bishop, was shocked when a loaf of bread she'd put in the fridge became hard as a rock in just one day. Even after toasting it, she said, it never regained its original texture. The best way to store bread is in a paper bag or a bread box at room temperature. However, you should only keep out the amount you plan to eat within 2 to 3 days. For long-term storage, the best method by far is to slice the bread and freeze it. Freezing almost completely halts the staling process. The key is to avoid defrosting frozen bread in the refrigerator. Defrosting it at refrigerated temperatures will restart the rapid staling process. You should either put the frozen slice directly into the toaster or let it thaw naturally at room temperature. Are you a frequent bread refrigerator? If so, try switching to room temperature or freezing from now on. 6th is honey. Honey is a remarkable food, one of nature's perfect preservatives. It has natural antibacterial properties that prevent it from spoiling. However, when you put honey in the refrigerator, it crystallizes, and the cold can cause moisture to seep in, degrading its quality. According to materials from the National Honey Board, honey stored below 50 degrees experiences a decrease in enzymatic activity, and if moisture enters, there's a risk of fermentation. A gentleman I know, George Watanabe, aged 75, told me a sad story about a beautiful jar of local honey he'd refrigerated. It became rock solid, and when he managed to scoop some out, he saw water droplets had formed inside. The aroma was gone, and it had even started to foam and develop a sour taste. His honey had begun to ferment. Honey is best stored in a sealed glass jar at room temperature, around 70 degrees. As long as you keep it out of direct sunlight, it will last almost indefinitely. Even if your honey crystallizes, its quality is not compromised. If it becomes too hard to use, you can simply place the jar in a bowl of warm water and let it slowly liquefy. A word of warning: never heat honey quickly in a microwave. The high temperature will destroy its delicate enzymes and beneficial nutrients. Also, ensure that any spoon you dip into the honey is completely dry. Any introduction of water can initiate the fermentation process. Have you ever been disappointed by refrigerated honey? If so, move it to your pantry today. Finally, number 7 is the tomato. So many of us refrigerate tomatoes, but this is a surefire way to destroy their flavor and nutrients. Refrigeration actually suppresses the gene activity within the tomato, halting the synthesis of the compounds that create its characteristic aroma and taste. Research from the Horticultural Sciences Department at the University of Florida reported that tomatoes stored below 54 degrees experience a deactivation of their flavor-generating genes. This is why refrigerated tomatoes are often bland, mealy, and tasteless. A neighbor, Mrs. Nakamura, who is 68, lamented that the tomatoes from her own garden tasted like cardboard after she stored them in the fridge. Tomatoes are best stored at room temperature while they are ripening. Once they are fully ripe, you can refrigerate them for a short period, but it's crucial to take them out at least 30 minutes before eating to allow their flavor compounds to reactivate. Storing them with the stem end down can also help reduce moisture loss. One more tip: do not store tomatoes in a sealed container. Without air circulation, they will soften and spoil quickly, and keep them away from other fruits. Tomatoes release ethylene gas, which will cause other produce to ripen and spoil faster. Have you had this experience with tasteless tomatoes? From now on, try ripening them at room temperature. So there you have it: bananas, potatoes, garlic, onions, bread, honey, and tomatoes. The moment these 7 foods enter your refrigerator, they either begin to lose their nutrients or, worse, start to develop harmful substances. Beyond these 7, there are many other potential storage pitfalls in our kitchens. Next, I will share some specific, practical tips to help you reduce these common storage mistakes. Now that we've covered the foods you shouldn't refrigerate, let's move on to the practical steps you can take to minimize storage mistakes altogether. If you implement just these few tips, you'll find that managing your ingredients becomes much easier, and you'll dramatically reduce nutrient loss. First, let's talk about setting up temperature zones in your refrigerator. Many people assume that the temperature is uniform throughout the fridge, but that is far from the truth. The door is the warmest part due to frequent opening, and the temperature varies between the top and bottom shelves. The refrigerator door experiences the most significant temperature fluctuations. Every time you open it, warm air from the room rushes in. For this reason, you should never store perishable items like milk or eggs on the door. Instead, this space is best for condiments and beverages, which are more resilient to temperature changes. Ketchup, mustard, sauces, water, and juice are all well suited for the door. The top shelf typically has the most consistent and stable temperature. This makes it the ideal place for leftovers and ready-to-eat foods. Cooked foods are sensitive to temperature shifts, so storing them in the most stable environment is key. The middle shelves are good for dairy products and eggs. Milk and yogurt are best placed towards the back of a middle shelf, where the temperature is coldest. The crisper drawers are designed to maintain higher humidity, making them suitable for vegetables and certain fruits that thrive in that environment. However, as we've discussed, things like tomatoes and bananas should not be kept here. If you have a separate fruit drawer, use it only for fruits that require refrigeration, like apples and pears. A friend of mine, Mr. Matsumoto, who is 73, used to put everything in his fridge randomly. After I explained the concept of temperature zones, he reorganized everything and was amazed at how much longer his food stayed fresh. Think about your own fridge. Which shelf do you open the most? If it's the door, make sure you aren't keeping important ingredients there. Second is the use of ventilated containers. An airtight container is not always the best choice. In fact, for certain foods, it can trap humidity and gases, causing them to spoil faster. This is especially true for ingredients like garlic and onions, which require air circulation. Never store them in a sealed container. Instead, try using mesh bags or wire baskets. These containers allow air to circulate while blocking direct light, which is particularly good for storing potatoes and onions. Garlic, too, will last much longer if kept in a mesh bag and hung up. Just be sure to keep them out of direct sunlight, which can cause them to sprout or discolor. In my experience, many people default to airtight containers for everything, but this often creates more problems than it solves. Trapped moisture is a breeding ground for mold, and root vegetables or spices will quickly soften or sprout. Every food has unique needs, and choosing the right container is vital. Another acquaintance, Mr. Kimura, switched to a ventilated basket for his potatoes and was astonished that they stayed fresh for over a month. What kind of containers are you using now? If you're only using airtight ones, consider adding some ventilated options to your kitchen. Third is the habit of proper food separation. It might seem logical to group all your fruits together and all your vegetables together, but this can be a mistake. Different types of produce can negatively affect one another, primarily due to ethylene gas. Ethylene is a natural gas released by fruits as they ripen, and it can cause other fruits and vegetables to ripen and spoil much faster. Apples, bananas, and tomatoes are particularly high ethylene producers. Therefore, they should always be stored away from other produce. Specifically, placing an onion next to a potato will cause the potato to sprout quickly, and the onion will also soften. The gas from the onion wakes the potato from its dormant state. The method I recommend is this: store high ethylene fruits separately, and keep potatoes and onions in different spaces, at least a few feet apart. It's also wise to separate vegetables by type: leafy greens with leafy greens, root vegetables with root vegetables. For leafy greens, you can pat them dry and wrap them in a paper towel before storing to help them stay fresh longer. What do you currently have stored next to your potatoes? If it's onions or apples, separate them today. Fourth is the practice of portioning. It is far safer to buy in bulk and then divide your food into smaller portions for storage, rather than keeping everything in one large container. Once a package is opened, the food's exposure to air accelerates oxidation. This is especially true for foods with high oil content and for spices. For example, instead of using honey from one large jar, portion it out into 3 smaller jars. Keep one in the kitchen for daily use and store the others in a cool, dark pantry. This way, only the jar you use frequently is exposed to air, while the rest remains fresh. Garlic is the same. If you mince a large batch, portion it into single-use amounts and freeze them. An ice cube tray is perfect for this. When you need it, you can just pop one out. Bread also benefits immensely from portioning. When you buy a loaf, keep enough for 2 days at room temperature and wrap the remaining slices individually in plastic wrap before freezing them. Then, you can take out 1 slice at a time and toast it directly from the freezer. The taste will be nearly identical to fresh bread. The core principle of portioning is to minimize air contact. One important note: always use clean utensils when portioning. Wet or dirty hands and spoons can introduce bacteria and cause food to spoil faster. It's also a good habit to label each portioned container with the date, so you can keep track of its freshness. A 74-year-old woman named Mrs. Cato told me that after she started portioning her food waste was cut by more than half. Do you tend to store everything in one large container? If so, try adopting the habit of portioning starting today. Fifth and finally is establishing a routine of regular checks and clear disposal criteria. Proper storage requires active management. Make it a habit to check your refrigerator and pantry at least once a week. It's crucial to remove any spoiled items immediately. One rotten apple can indeed spoil the whole bunch, as mold spores can spread through the air and contaminate other foods. When you open your refrigerator, if you notice a strange smell, if an ingredient has changed color, or if its texture seems off, don't hesitate. Throw it away. So many people get sick from eating something they were hesitant to discard because they didn't want to be wasteful. This is especially true for moldy food. Never eat it. The mold you see is just the tip of the iceberg. The invisible toxins, called mycotoxins, can penetrate deep into the food. Some people try to cut off the moldy part, but it's highly likely that the toxins have already spread throughout plust. The method I suggest is to set a specific pantry checkup day. For instance, you could decide to inspect your fridge and pantry every Sunday evening. This allows you to start the new week organized, check expiration dates, and plan to use up ingredients that are about to expire. It's also a good time to wipe down the shelves and dry any damp spots, and establish clear rules for disposal. If it smells off, throw it out. If the color is wrong, throw it out. If there's even a tiny bit of mold, throw it out. When in doubt, it is always better for your health to discard it. Trying to save a few dollars on food isn't worth a hospital bill that could cost thousands. When was the last time you truly cleaned out and organized your refrigerator? If it's been more than a month, I urge you to inspect it today. Simply removing spoiled items will vastly improve the environment inside your fridge. If you can master these 5 simple habits: understanding temperature zones, using ventilated containers, separating your foods, portioning, and conducting regular checks, you will significantly reduce your storage mistakes. It's not difficult, is it? When you master these skills, your food will become your ally, not your enemy. Let's summarize what we've learned today. The information we've covered is truly vital. Your refrigerator is not necessarily a safe haven for your food. If used incorrectly, it can become a dangerous space that compromises your health. Remember this: a banana, when refrigerated, loses over 80% of its vitamin C. For this tropical fruit, the cold is a destructive force, rupturing its cell walls and causing its nutrients to leach away. A potato, when chilled, converts its starch to sugar, which then creates the carcinogen acrylamide during high heat cooking. Remember the study that showed a 3-fold increase in sugar in just 2 weeks. Garlic loses more than half of its antibacterial allicin and becomes a breeding ground for mold toxins. The very food we eat for health can turn into a poison. An onion becomes soft and susceptible to rot. Whole onions must be stored in a cool, room temperature environment, not the cold of a fridge. Bread stales 6 times faster in the refrigerator as the cold temperature crystallizes its starches. Honey crystallizes, absorbs moisture, and risks fermentation. This naturally shelf-stable food is actually degraded by refrigeration, and a tomato's flavor-generating genes are deactivated, rendering it bland and tasteless. Below 54 degrees, the genes that create a tomato's signature taste and aroma simply shut down. The moment these 7 foods are refrigerated, their nutrients and flavor either vanish or they become hazardous. However, if you simply follow the principles of room temperature storage, you can preserve the life force of your food and protect your health. Bananas should be at 55 to 70 degrees, potatoes in a dark place at 45 to 50 degrees, and garlic in a ventilated spot at 60 to 65 degrees. Onions need a cool, dry place at room temperature. And bread should be in a paper bag on the counter. Honey belongs in a sealed glass jar at around 70 degrees. And tomatoes should ripen on the windowsill. And please, do not forget the 5 practical tips we learned. It all starts with understanding your refrigerator's temperature zones. The door is for condiments, the top shelf for leftovers, the middle for dairy, and the crisper only for vegetables that require it. Utilize ventilated containers. An airtight seal isn't always best. Potatoes, onions, and garlic need air, so use mesh bags or wire baskets. Separate your foods. Keep high ethylene producers like apples, bananas, and tomatoes away from other produce. And never store potatoes and onions together. Adopt the habit of portioning your food to reduce waste and maintain freshness. Honey, garlic, bread. Portion them all. And finally, inspect your food storage areas regularly. Once a week, check your fridge and pantry. And be ruthless about discarding anything that is spoiled. My one immediate suggestion for you is this. Pick one food item from your refrigerator right now and change its storage environment. If you have potatoes in there, take them out and put them in a cool, dark place. If you have garlic, place it in a ventilated basket. If there's a loaf of bread, take it out of the fridge and put it in a paper bag. This one small change will be the first step in protecting your health. Please, do it now. Today, not tomorrow. The difference between mismanaged and properly managed food is enormous. If you continue to refrigerate these items incorrectly, you will continue to strip them of their nutrients while toxins accumulate. And eventually, your body will weaken. Digestive problems will arise. Your immune system will falter, and you will be plagued by chronic fatigue. That unexplained indigestion, that constant feeling of being bloated, that sense of being easily tired, it can all begin with improper food storage. But if you store your food correctly, as we've learned today, you will absorb all of its nutrients, and your body will remain healthy, your digestion will ease, your immunity will strengthen, and you will be filled with vitality. You can eat the exact same food, but by simply changing the storage method, your body's response will be completely different. This is the power of proper food management. The truth I have confirmed over 30 years of research is this. Health does not come from grand gestures. It begins with the small, daily habits of how we store and consume the food we eat. It is far more important to properly store the ingredients you already have than to buy expensive health supplements. If you put what you've learned today into practice, I promise you will feel a change. Try it diligently for just 1 month. You will experience firsthand your body feeling lighter and your stomach feeling more at ease. In my next discussion, I will teach you about the top 5 habits to avoid in the refrigerator. These are things many of us do without a second thought, but I will explain in detail just how harmful they can be to your health. From how you open the refrigerator door to the types of containers you use, I will reveal how these everyday habits can be surprisingly dangerous. You won't want to miss it. Finally, if this story has been helpful to you, please share your thoughts. Tell me which of the foods we discussed was the most shocking to you. Your stories can be of great help to others. And if you know someone who needs this information, your parents, your siblings, your friends, please share this with them. Small actions create big changes. When each of us puts this knowledge into practice, we collectively build a healthier future for ourselves and our loved ones. Have a healthy day, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. I am always rooting for your health. Thank you.